Okay, let's just jump right in. You know that feeling, right? Your phone starts ringing and your stomach just drops. Well, you are definitely not alone. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the real reason so many of us hate talking on the phone. And I promise you, it is not what you think. Does this sound a little too familiar? I mean, you can fire off texts and DMs all day long, juggling multiple conversations without even thinking about it. But the second you have to make one simple 5-minute phone call, suddenly it feels like this huge, exhausting chore. It's not just you, and today we're going to get into the psychology of why that is. And this is where our heads go, right? We immediately start thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I just shy? Did I forget how to talk to people? We start blaming ourselves, thinking it's some kind of personal failure. But what if all that self-criticism is completely missing the point? It's time to bust that myth for good. All right, so let's just tear that whole idea apart. This isn't about a lack of social skills or being awkward. Nope. This is about biology. It's about how our brains are wired and what's actually happening inside your head when you pick up that phone. We've all done it. You see your friends or colleagues chatting away on the phone without a care in the world and think, why is that so easy for them and so hard for me? We slap a label on ourselves, awkward, anxious, but that's just a misdiagnosis. The real culprit is something else entirely, and it affects way more of us than you'd think. Here's the truth. It is not you. It's your brain. A phone call literally forces your brain into cognitive overdrive. It's like a high-intensity workout for your mind. So that feeling of being totally wiped out afterward, that's not a character flaw. It's a very real side effect of a sensory and processing overload. Okay, so what is this sensory overload thing really? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's happening in your brain that makes a phone call feel so much more draining than talking to someone face-to-face. This all boils down to one key idea: mental exhaustion. Think about it. For thousands of years, our brains evolved to process a ton of information in a conversation. Body language, facial expressions, eye contact, you name it. On a phone call, pretty much all of that data is just gone, and your brain has to scramble to fill in all those blanks. That frantic guesswork is exactly what leaves you feeling so drained. And this is where your brain is really putting in the work. With no visual cues, you're suddenly a detective, analyzing every tiny little change in their tone of voice. Is that long pause because they're thinking, or are they mad at me? What does that silence even mean? You're basically performing a high-wire act of interpretation with only a fraction of the information you're used to, all while trying to sound normal and think of what to say next. No wonder it's exhausting. So now we get why phone calls are such a mental workout. But what about the flip side? Why does texting feel so easy? Well, it all comes down to one simple but incredibly powerful advantage: the ability to pause. This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? A phone call is a spontaneous performance. You are live on stage with no script. But texting gives you the pause, and that little bit of space gives you what psychologists call identity control. You can write, delete, and rewrite a text to make sure that joke lands just right, or that your advice sounds genuinely caring. You're not just reacting anymore, you are carefully, thoughtfully responding. So, knowing all this, we can totally reframe how we think about this. This isn't about being bad at phone calls. It's about valuing a completely different, and you could argue, a much more modern set of communication skills. Think about it this way. Your preference for texting isn't a weakness at all. It's actually a sign that you value precision. It means you'd rather send a carefully thought-out message than risk a spontaneous and maybe a little clumsy immediate reaction. You just prioritize getting it right. So the next time you feel that hesitation to pick up a ringing phone, I want you to remember this. It is not a social flaw. It's a preference for clarity, for thoughtfulness, and for control in a world that often feels like it's just moving way too fast. And I'll leave you with this final thought, a question to chew on. In a world where we carefully craft everything, from our emails to our social media profiles, has our very definition of charisma started to shift? Maybe the most compelling people aren't the fast talkers anymore, but the ones who choose their words with absolute, deliberate precision.